It's now time for Energy Insights, where you get an inside view and local perspective of all the oil and gas progress going on in the Mid-Ohio Valley. This program is brought to you by the Southeastern Ohio Oil and Gas Association and can be heard every Saturday at 9 a.m. on WMOA AM 1490, FM 101.3, JAWS Country FM 100.9, and ESPN Radio AM 630 and FM 92.9. Here's Johnny Wharf, your local host.
Energy Insights on a Saturday morning, and we are pleased to be joined by Matthew Hammond, president of the Ohio Oil and Gas Association. Welcome to the program, Mr. Hammond. Maybe for the listeners, just a little background on you as a form of an introduction.
Yeah, hey John, thanks for having me. It's good to be with you. I've been the president of the Ohio Oil and Gas Association now for a little over 3 years. Prior to that, I've had some experience on energy issues going back to some pipeline projects. Worked a little bit for Chesapeake Energy and have always been around, the public policy side of the industry, and which is obviously a big part of what I do here for the association.
Maybe for the listeners, talk a little bit about associations. I'm on a broadcast association. The Ohio Oil and Gas Association is who you represent, and then our program is sponsored by the Southeastern Ohio Oil and Gas Association. So as we try to put it in perspective, in layman's terms, talk a little bit about you represent just the entire state of Ohio as it relates to the industry?
We do. We're a statewide trade association. That's one area where we do differ from SUGA. They're a more regional, with including parts of West Virginia as well. But our membership consists of Ohio's conventional legacy producers that have been developing oil and gas in Ohio for several decades. But we also represent the unconventional producers exploring the Utica Shale here in Ohio as well. And that includes midstream companies, large pipeline companies, and then a lot of associated oil field service provider companies as well, and professional organizations like law firms, accounting firms, groups like that.
And then I know it changes day to day, if not hour to hour. It does in all businesses, but maybe some of the challenges that you're facing as you hit the ground on a daily basis right now, some of the things that you're looking at.
Yeah, absolutely. As you know, this industry is not short of challenges, but also a lot of opportunities as well. First of all, we're here in May of 2021, and last year was a pretty tough year for the industry with global pandemic, and commerce across the world kind of came to a halt, which clearly has a severe impact on commodity prices, in not just Ohio or the Appalachian Basin, but across the country. The industry's rebounding from that a little bit, and what we're trying to do, whatever we do, really, whether it's the public policy side and our work in the General Assembly or with the regulators, find operational efficiencies that will help our members, primarily producers, operate efficiently, cut costs, things like that. Those are all things that we look at in everything that we do, and how can that be a benefit to our membership, whether, like things we're working on in the State House right now on leasing state minerals, for example, trying to find ways to streamline something that's been in law for 10 years and, get a streamlined process in place that it makes it easier for our members to have access to state-owned minerals, and which is obviously a benefit to private landowners as well.
Just great information. We always say we try to learn something new every week on the show, so we appreciate you helping us with that. Our guest is Matthew Hammond, president of the Ohio Oil and Gas Association, and our program is Energy Insights. Lastly, in closing, just wanted to ask, you got to wake up every day and go to, some people say go to work, and it's not really work if you're having a good time. Tell me what you like best about, representing the OOGA.
Oh, wow, that's a great question. I think just one, interacting with the membership, the expertise that is within companies, no matter how big they are or how small they might be, and you learn a lot from them. There's not a shortage of issues out there that we have to tackle, and they're all very different, and it requires me and folks on our staff to work with different people in the companies that we represent, and it's a great opportunity to interact with them, learn from them, and then also take that knowledge and advocate on their behalf. To me, advocating on behalf of this industry is exciting, it's challenging, but it's also a tremendous amount of fun.
Yeah, I can tell that from hearing from you. We appreciate your time and hope to continue the conversation in future programs. Matthew Hammond is the president of the Ohio Oil and Gas Association. Thanks for your time, sir. Energy Insights on a Saturday morning, and again, we're pleased to have the president of the Ohio Oil and Gas Association, Matthew Hammond, with us, and talk a little bit about where you, I assume you're in Columbus, Matthew, and maybe just talk a little bit about your central, location and how you work from them to reach out across the state.
Yeah, John, thanks for having me. Our office is in Columbus, but we have a reach really throughout the state, but primarily in Southeast Ohio. We're in Columbus because a lot of what we do is work in the General Assembly with the governor of the regulatory agencies as well. That allows us to be immediately available to interact with them. But on the flip side of that, we have somebody on staff that spends nearly all of their time working with local stakeholders in the operating area where our members are, and helping economic development organizations understand what's happening in the industry, answering questions or making introductions for our members to, say, county commissioners, township trustees, and help build relationships there.
As the Ohio Oil and Gas Association, we're on the border here. I'm in Marietta, so we're on the West Virginia border. How does our association, your association, Ohio Oil and Gas Association, compare with, with other states in terms of production?
In terms of production, what our members are producing?
No, yeah, like oil and gas production, Ohio as compared to West Virginia or Michigan or other states.
Yeah, so really if you look at Ohio, West Virginia, and Pennsylvania, if you take the basin together, it's one of the largest natural gas producing regions in the world. Outside of Texas and Russia, we're producing a tremendous amount of natural gas here. Certainly Pennsylvania, there's a lot of development up in the northeast part of the state with the Marcellus Shale. But, a lot of companies have come in and turned a focus to Ohio. Development has been slower of late because of commodity prices. And, I think that there's a lot of investment in Ohio. The industry's invested $86 billion in the state of Ohio from the upstream, midstream, downstream sector, all tied to oil and gas producers developing and producing natural gas here in the state.
I'll play off that, Matthew. It's, there's got to be a real sense of pride. You hear both sides of the aisle on, what the oil and gas is doing, but if you think about the pride of the industry in terms of how this money, whether it's, the severance, whether it's taxes or schools, funds, or whatever the case, but the money that is funneled back, particularly in that Shale Crescent area that you talked about, back into the communities has got to instill a sense of pride in the industry.
Absolutely. This association, and along with our members, we take great pride in things that we can do as an association directly or what our members do on their own to give back to communities. And those are all through charitable donations that can go to food banks, that can go to other good parts of the communities to help support Southeast Ohio. But that's also, as you mentioned, taxes. There's been a lot of ad valorem tax paid in the state of Ohio. That goes, I think it's about 60 to 65% of that goes directly back to schools. We've seen a lot of things that schools can do, positive ways that they can use that money to help make improvements. But then there's also, in addition to that, you've seen natural gas power generations facilities come up, and that's been a huge tax base as well to local school districts. Now, we don't necessarily represent those people, but it's important to note that if it's not for producers drilling natural gas wells in Ohio, those facilities aren't going up. So it's just an extension of what this industry can mean to not just the state, but the local communities.
And speaking of that, and I know you've got young kids out on a baseball diamond, I go back to the day when, you'd go down and see the local Bantam League teams or whatever, travel teams sponsored by, some of the local companies. When you're outside of the world of oil and gas, do you still look at what this industry does in terms of coming back to rural America and mom and pops and just the guys driving down the road getting from place to place?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think when you see it happen in a region like Southeast Ohio that has been waiting for a huge opportunity like this, it's not just the capital investment that's spent, but it's, like I mentioned, it's those charitable efforts that companies make, right, becoming a member of the community. Their employees live and work in the communities in which we're operating, and they take great pride in that. And they want to make sure that they're giving back and doing things that are positive for a region of the state that, I think can certainly use the support. I think it's been a great benefit and a partnership between the companies and the communities.
All right. We thank you for your service to the industry. Thank you for taking time with us here as well as we do Energy Insights, brought to you by the Southeastern Ohio Oil and Gas Association. Our guest, the president of the Ohio Oil and Gas Association, Matthew Hammond. He will join us again on the program in the future. Sir, thank you for your time. Johnny Wharf and Energy Insights on a Saturday morning. Suddenly we're fast friends. I've got Matthew Hammond again, president of the Ohio Oil and Gas Association. We had an opportunity to speak on a couple of occasions here on the program, and I want to get into some thoughts, maybe dig a little deeper as it relates to oil and gas and alternative energy. And I'm in the radio business, Matthew, so I kind of liken it to traditional radio versus a satellite radio, and what one has and what one doesn't, or one really can't exist without the other. So maybe you can talk a little bit about this alternative energy that we hear so much about, and how it coexists with oil and gas.
Yeah, absolutely. There's certainly renewable energy development and investments taking place in Ohio, obviously primarily on the western part of the state. But if you look at, sort of coexisting and living all underneath one tent, we can certainly do that in a way that I think most people look at it, all of the above as a good thing. But we believe that we are, from a natural gas standpoint, reliable, we're affordable, we're abundant, and we're a great source of energy for the state, and really are starting to see an uptick in how much generation is being built from natural gas. There are, I think, anywhere between 10 to 12 natural gas-fired power generation facilities, either in some phase of the operation, permitting, construction, and I think that's proof that natural gas is not just a source of energy now, today for Ohioans, but energy of the future. And I think that we compete very well with those renewable energies, forms of energy, and that's a huge benefit to what's happening here in Ohio.
I think about some of the challenges and the issues as you represent the industry. And again, I use the analogy from my industry. If I'm on Capitol Hill and I'm talking about small market radio, which is what I am, and then iHeart, which is the big company that has so many stations around the country. I'm on the same playing field and need to represent both. In your case, you've got big oil, and then you've got the guy down the street, right, that has a family-owned operation, and you've got to go to the table and say, this is us, right?
Absolutely. We're the natural gas and oil industry. Some development takes place on larger scale, like shale development, but at the end of the day, our members are drilling natural gas and oil wells. They're producing wells, whether they were drilled, a year ago or 20 years ago. And there's certainly a balance that we have to strike to represent the collective interests of unconventional producers and conventional producers. But we've been able to successfully do that since shale development started in Ohio in 2011, really. And it's always just about finding a balance as part of one of the jobs of, running a trade association, a balance of what's in the best interest of the collective industry. But we've always maintained unity within the association, and I think it's worked out pretty well for us.
And this is not meant to be a curveball, but I'm just trying to think of how our listeners out there would think, and they might be thinking where their feet are in terms of, the pipeline that got shut down, and then the gas, was in a short call, and all of a sudden it's a national story. At what level, do you have to legislate, or do you get involved in that, or do you?
Well, specific to the Colonial Pipeline, we weren't involved in that line. That project's not in Ohio. We didn't have any issues with getting fuel to stations, no shortage there. And it really wasn't even almost a shortage of fuel. It was just a shortage of ways to get it to market. So that was the immediate challenge that we had there. But, when you look at, though, things that the Biden administration are looking at, it is an example of, the importance that this industry plays, not just in Ohio or the Appalachian Basin, but across the country and even on the global marketplace. Pipelines have to be able to operate. Pipelines have to be permitted. We need that infrastructure here in order to support Americans and across the country.
When you set your plan on a given day, I assume that would be cause as well for you to say, all right, sitting around the boardroom table, guys, we're good right now, but we better be proactive if this should happen or this should happen going forward. What's the plan?
Absolutely. I think there are always ways that you take an incident that might not immediately impact your interests,
right.
For example, the state of Ohio where we are, but I think it's a 50,000 level view look at how policy decisions impact what happens to the industry. How do we engage there? How do we educate not just State House folks here in Ohio, but our congressional delegation as well, and give them the tools that they need to advocate for this industry and to, look out for our best interests, which is also looking out for their constituents' best interests.
Program's Energy Insights brought to you by the Southeastern Ohio Oil and Gas Association. Our guest is Matthew Hammond. He's the president of the Ohio Oil and Gas Association, and a great opportunity for us to learn a bit about you. My only regret is that we're not doing it in person, so I hope in the future we'll have an opportunity to meet and maybe sit down and do some more shows. But we thank you for the insights and the knowledge, and wish you the best going forward. If you need anything from our neck of the woods, feel free to give us a call. But as always, thank you for your time.
Thank you, John. It was good being with you.
Thank you for listening to Energy Insights, brought to you by the Southeastern Ohio Oil and Gas Association. Tune in every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. on WMOA Local Radio, JAWS Country, and ESPN Radio, as Johnny Wharf brings you your local and inside perspectives going on in the oil and gas industry right here in the Mid-Ohio Valley.